Hello planty people, welcome back to my channel. My name is Darylyn and today I have a whole bunch of plant chores to do. So I don't know that I'm gonna get through all of them, but I think we're definitely gonna repot a couple of Anthurium because they're in my grow tent and they just don't need to be in there anymore. So I need to make some space and I have some air layering to do. And then I also want to take you around my house and just show you all of the new Anthurium leaves that I've been noticing popping up. It is January right now, but I do live in Southern California. So I'm very lucky that I'm oftentimes blessed with pretty nice winter growth, I will have to say. So let's go to the grow tent and take a look in there and see. I have two, maybe more than that in mind. So let's go grab the plants that we're going to repot. All right, let's take a look in here and see. Okay, so there's two in here that I had in mind specifically. They're unfortunately like in the back, of course. So okay, so this is one of the plants that needs to be repotted. This is a Crystallinum ex magnificum. It was one of the plants that I got in my Indonesia plant haul. And then back here is one of the beautiful hybrids that I also got in my Indonesia plant order. I don't know why there's a string on top of it, but got a lot of roots. So I think that it's time to repot this as well. I lied. I only feel like dealing with two of these. Okay. Got them right here. And so now we're gonna go to the kitchen. Oh, look who it is. Where'd he go? There he is. Look who it is. Hi, Ralphie. All right, let's get these potted up. All right, so I got my potting mats and yeah, I'm excited to get these potted up. They've been in the grow tent a long time. I got both of these plants in my big order from Indonesia, the import order. When did I get those? I think I want to say I got them in September. And they've both just been in moss in my grow tent ever since, and they've both done really well. Actually, that's not true. This Crystallinum ex magnificum, I took it out to the greenhouse and then it got like way too dried out while I was on vacation and it lost a couple of the small leaves. So I had to bring it back and I put it in the grow tent and it's completely fine. It's got so many roots now. And then this hybrid, I had two of these and the other one I put into the greenhouse and it's okay, but it definitely had some acclimation, which kind of sucks because it doesn't look as like really beautiful and perfect as it was when I got it. But I mean, they're resilient plants. It should bounce back. All right, so my kind of plan for these is I would like to put them into pond. So let me run out and see which pots I want to put them in. I think I would really like to keep them in the medium size, not the large size. My kind of experience with Anthurium and pond is that you want to keep the pots as small as possible, especially if the plants you have are more juvenile. These are both, they look pretty good. They look pretty mature. I think they'll be okay to have a little bit of extra room, but I just want to make sure. So let me go grab some pots really quick and we'll take them out of the moss and we'll kind of see what we're dealing with. So hang on one second. So here's pots. Then let me go grab my pond. I have the real stuff. I have a bag of it and I love the real pond. It works really well, but I don't know that these pots are gonna be big enough. I hope so, but let me go grab the pond. Okay, so let's do this one first because it's smaller. Yeah, so this is a Crystallinum hybrid, Anthurium crystallinum hybrid. I imported this from Indonesia and so far it's done really well. Yeah, the trick with importing plants is that you want them to spend as little time as possible at customs, and that is definitely easier said than done. So I'm just gonna all this moss off. Yeah, man, Anthurium absolutely love moss. Like, if you are importing Anthurium for the first time, you don't really know what to do with them, or you're going to an Ecuagenera pop-up, or you have a plant that you think you need to rehab and you're just not sure what to do with it. I have had almost 100% success, I would say, keeping Anthurium alive and acclimating them and rooting them just in moss. In high humidity, they really, really like moss. A lot of Anthurium are epiphytes, and so in the wild, growing in a clump of moss on the side of a tree is pretty reasonable expectation for where you might find them. There are a few terrestrial species of Anthurium. I guess the one that like most people know of is the Anthurium clarinervium, and I've never killed an Anthurium clarinervium in moss, but I will say that they don't just like explode with growth the way that a lot of the other ones do. But yeah, Anthurium for the most part do really well in moss, and especially if you give them high humidity. I've had really good luck with my Anthurium and moss on heat mat, even just out in my ambient humidity, which tends to be like around 60%. I'm pretty lucky out here that we have pretty decent humidity in this apartment. But yeah, if you're not sure what to do with an Anthurium, and it's been shipped to you bare root or imported or whatever, just giving it nice moss. And I like to use a pot either that has holes in the bottom so that you can bottom water it, or you can actually totally get away with not having holes in the bottom as long as you have a see-through container so you can see how much water you're pouring in, and then just like fill the bottom of it up a little bit, and the moss will absorb the water like a sponge. These roots look really good. There's not really hardly any rot or anything that's dried out. There's one little kind of dried out, rotted piece right there, but I mean, who knows how long that's been there. It looks for the most part like this plant has done really, really well. Okay, so it looks like there's a little bit more kind of rotted strands towards the bottom, but again, like who knows how long those have been there. Like they could have been there since, can't see that probably, but they could have been there since, right after this plant was imported. So I'm not worried about it at all. Just gonna remove them and get the plant potted up. My experience moving Anthurium from moss to pon is that it's really smooth. I've never really had an issue with moving an Anthurium from moss to pon, at least not anything that happened right away. Usually they just kind of chill out for a while, probably because they're rooting, but I don't use self-watering pots that have, clear plastic, so I can't see what they're doing. But usually when I move an Anthurium from moss to pon, they just kind of seem like they're not doing anything for a few months, but it really is that they're probably rooting. And then after a few months, you'll get a nice leaf usually. Sometimes the first leaf after you move them is much bigger, and sometimes it's the second leaf. But yeah, for the most part, I really have like very few reservations doing that. Okay, so something interesting on this plant is it looks like there was a leaf that wanted to come out and it didn't, and it looks like it either broke off or rotted or something. So I'm just gonna peel off this old cataphyll sheath. I just don't want anything that could potentially rot or contribute to rotting the cataphyll to be there. So went ahead and pulled that off. One thing about pon you need to be careful about with Anthurium is that you don't want the pon to be so close to the base of the cataphyll that you rot it. I learned that the hard way last year with an Anthurium villanorum, and yeah, that really sucked. So just be aware that if you're putting an Anthurium into pon, don't fill the pon up too high. And with pon, it's a little bit less essential to get every single teeny tiny last morsel of moss off. Like, it's really important with leca, but I do still want to get as much off as possible. This plant doesn't look like it put out a ton of new root, so it's not adhered to the moss as much as it would have been if it had put out a ton of root. I think that this, for the most part, is the root that this plant came to me with. Okay, so let's see how this looks in this pot. So it definitely fits. It's just gonna be a little bit tricky to get the plant into the pot as deep as I want because some of these roots are like pretty thick and they're kind of all pointing straight down. So I'm just kind of arranging it, but I'm gonna have to kind of I think it'll be okay, but I'm gonna have to kind of work with it a little bit more because you definitely don't want to just put the plant in without having a little bit of pond in there first. So I'm gonna put some pond into the bottom and then we'll see kind of if we can get that plant in there. I'm pretty confident it'll be fine. It's just sometimes it can be difficult. So I'm just gonna use this little scoop to kind of put the pond in. For any of you who haven't seen what the Lechuza pond looks like, it's just like a whole bunch of little gravel. And I find that it is much, much easier to work with when it's dry. Normally, I like to rinse my pond and my perlite, anything like that, but the real stuff, because the grit is so fine, it's just, it sticks to everything. It's really, really difficult. So I put about like, you can't really see how deep it is in there, but it's probably, I don't know, maybe half an inch from the bottom. All right, so then to get this in here is gonna be a little bit of finagling is going to be needed. Because I don't want the roots all up, like around themselves too much, because I don't want there to be like air pockets. I think that's about as good as we're gonna get. I don't think I'm gonna be able to show you this too well, but as you can see, the roots are all in there, and I'm just gonna put the pond on top of it. So my plan for this plant is once it's repotted, I am not going to put it back into the grow tent. I'm going to put it on my plant shelf in my room. Hopefully it does well. I've got a number of other Anthurium that have done really well in my room, so I'm not too worried about it, but it is a really beautiful Anthurium, so it would be a bit of a shame if it kind of went downhill, but I think it'll be good. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now, what I always do when I transition an Anthurium to open air and put it into pond is first I'm gonna actually flush the pond. So I don't know that you're gonna be able to see. Oh yeah, you guys can see. Okay, so I'm gonna flush the pond and I'm just gonna run water through it basically. Get a lot of that nasty grit and the rock dust out of it. And then I'm actually gonna just put it into the pot reservoir really quick so that it doesn't drip all over my potting mat. But I still actually do have to put the water reservoir meter into the pot. But basically the pot works because there's this little styrofoam kind of buoy at the bottom and it just like floats up with the water line. So, okay. So that's one done. I kind of like to let them drain a little bit before I put water into the reservoir, but I'll do that later. And I do give all of my Anthurium filtered pH balanced water. I highly, highly, highly recommend that you do the same. It really helps. So it's a really pretty plant. So I'm gonna actually just leave this over here. And now we're gonna do this bigger one. I really hope that the CXM fits into this smaller pot because I do not want to have to go get another one and be like, I don't want it to have to go into one of the big ones, but we'll see. All right, so this one, like the other one, has like kind of a nasty looking sheath over the caterpillar. So I'm just gonna rip that off so that it's not hopefully in danger of rotting the caterpillar. And then there's some like old icky petiole stumps, so I just want to pull those out. This one actually is putting out a new leaf and it looks like the new leaf kind of got a little bit like skewed in the grow tent, so hopefully it's gonna like being out of the grow tent, having a little bit more room. There are some roots like growing out of the slats in this pot. There's like more on this side. So hopefully I can get this out without breaking any of them. Fortunately, the slats in this pot are fairly big. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking that there's no way that this is gonna be small enough for this like medium-sized pot. I mean, most of it is moss, but Okay, so this one actually has a lot of dead root, and that's probably from when it was in the greenhouse and dried out all the way and it lost those other leaves. It looks like it's regrown a lot and recovered really well, but I'm gonna have to remove a lot of this dead root, and you know, maybe it actually will fit in this smaller pot. Let's get all this moss off first, and I'll see if I can show it. I haven't looked at these roots since I put this into moss after I got the plant. So I'm I am kind of finding some broken roots that I missed the first time around, and there's definitely a lot more dead ones on this one. So, I mean, this plant has a couple really long roots, but other than that, I don't actually think it has that much more than the hybrid that I just potted up. So I kind of think this might actually fit in the medium-sized pot. We'll see. All right, so apart from these long ones, I don't think that this has more root than the other one. I think that this actually will fit in here. Might need to just do a bit of arranging like with the last one, but I think if we just kind of arrange the longer roots around in a bit of a circle, it'll fit completely fine. Oh yeah, that more than fits. All right, great, because I really didn't want to put this in a big pot. I'm excited to have these plants out where I can see them more because they've been in the grow tent for so long, but they're really beautiful, and I'm really excited. I love having Anthurium out around the house, so this is going to be really nice to have some more gorgeous ones. Unfortunately, my Anthurium cyrenoi, for whatever reason, lost all its leaves, and it just looked like it rotted, the roots rotted. I don't know. I'm thinking my theory is that it must have just not taken well to the change in light, because we've been having really gloomy weather for a while, and there was a lot less light. Other than that, I don't really know. I mean, obviously it's been colder, but it's okay. I have a couple other ones, so that one is just a little stump now, just a chunk really. It's in the grow tent. Hopefully it revives, but if it doesn't, I have some other ones, but that will be a shame if it doesn't somehow find a way to come back to life, because the plant was really pretty. Hopefully that'll do the trick, and I'll just put a little bit more on top to cover up the roots up top. And then I think this one's done too. So I'm gonna just flush this really quick. And then the other thing that I forgot to do to the other one, but I'll do it off camera because we've been filming for a while, is I like to treat the leaves with some Physan 20 because it helps prevent against bacterial spots. So I'd like for you guys to be able to see. So I moved the camera, but this is just some diluted Physan 20. And this helps prevent bacterial and fungal spots. Okay, so while those dry, I am gonna go ahead and do some air layering because I have a couple plants that I really need to cut. They're just getting kind of big, so let's go take care of that. Okay, so another thing that I really need to do is actually move some of the little Anthurium seedlings and baby propagations out of this terrarium so that I can move some different ones into it. Because most of the Anthurium babies that my friend sent me that I hauled a little while back, they're getting way too big for their domes. So here's an example. Here's the Anthurium dresslery. It's just like completely outgrown its dome already. So I'm going to put it and the other ones into that terrarium. This is the Fairchild Crystallinum X Red Crystallinum. And then this is the Anthurium Fairchild X Luxurians. And so they're all getting too big. So I'm going to take them out of these domes and just put them into that little terrarium. But to make room for that, I'm gonna have to move some of the ones that are in the terrarium that are a little bit more common and maybe don't need to be babied as much out of here and into a prop box. So this is Anthurium forgetii white stripes. Looks like it's rooted up really nicely. So I think this will do just fine in a prop box. So I'm gonna move that one. This is Anthurium Wonder Boy. I did haul it not too long ago. It's from my friend. And as you can see, it's rooting like crazy, but I don't know why the foliage hasn't done so great, but this one's gonna stay in the terrarium. I just need to move it out of the way. This is unfortunately the stump of a Crystallinum X Magnificum, and I honestly should probably just take this out of here and put it into moss. I don't know what went wrong with this. This is kind of why I always tell people, like, juvenile Anthurium don't do that great in pawn, but it's kind of a mess. I'm gonna take it out of the terrarium and put it somewhere else. This was a baby queen Anthurium, and it's actually looks like it's doing just fine. If there's room in there, I might leave this one in there, but yeah, it lost all of its leaves. Looks like it has 2 growth points on it, but okay. So then this is just a regular old Anthurium crystallinum. It's doing great in there. Looks like it's pushing a new leaf, but it definitely is time for me to move it out. So these two I'm definitely moving out. This I'm moving out. And then these Queen Anthurium babies, I think, I don't know, like, I mean, they're rooting, so I think I'm gonna leave them in there if there's room. This one, oh, it looks like this one was pushing a leaf and then it like kind of aborted it. Huh, I wonder why the queens aren't doing that well in there. But okay, so this one, looking good. Stick that one into the terrarium. Okay, so this is the Fairchild X Red Crystallinum. I'm gonna stick that into the terrarium. And then this is Anthurium dresslery. It's doing really, really well. This is a very cool, very rare plant. So it's very special to me. I'm gonna just put that root, cover it up with a little bit more of this moss. And yeah, it's doing good. So I'm gonna put that in there too. Ugh. All right, so those three, I'm actually gonna put the dresslery in the middle. Just the way that it's kind of situated, it'll have more room, and it's also the largest. I think that all three of those probably need to be watered, so I'll have to do that. And then I'm gonna put the Wonder Boy back in there because he's staying. And then I'm gonna put these Queen Anthurium cups back in. All right, so that is my little Anthurium terrarium. Look at all the babies, very exciting. Can't wait till they're all ready to move out.